She entered the wrong hospital room, the millionaire whispered. I've waited for you. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The steady hum of fluorescent lights filled the empty corridor of Miami General Hospital. The night smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain drifting through the half-open windows. Maria Alvarez walked quickly, the soles of her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. In her hands, she carried a small bouquet of daisies wrapped in brown paper. Her friend from the neighborhood had been in an accident earlier that evening, and Maria had rushed over straight after finishing her shift at the community garden. It was nearly midnight. The nurse at the front desk had told her, room 307, down the east wing. But exhaustion blurred her vision, and the numbers on the doors glimmered under harsh white light. She stopped at room 370 instead. The door was slightly open, and a rhythmic monitor beeped softly inside. She took a quiet breath and stepped in. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of machines. A tall man lay motionless on the bed, a thin oxygen tube tracing the curve of his cheek. His left arm was bandaged. His right hand rested loosely on the blanket, pale and still. Maria's throat tightened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You look worse than they said." She set the flowers on the bedside table and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You probably cannot hear me," she murmured, "but I am here. You are not alone tonight." The man's eyelids fluttered, almost imperceptibly. A slow inhale shuddered through his chest. Then a faint, raspy voice broke the silence. "You came, I have waited for you." Maria froze. The words seemed to vibrate through the sterile air. Her pulse spiked. "I what?" she stammered. The man's eyes opened, gray and unfocused, searching her face as if he recognized her. Outside, thunder rolled over Miami's skyline. The fluorescent light flickered once, then steadied. Maria's fingers trembled as she reached for the call button, but something in his gaze stopped her. It was not pain or confusion. It was relief. "I am sorry," she said softly. "I think I have the wrong." Before she could finish, the man's hand twitched, reaching toward hers. His touch was faint, but deliberate. "Do not go," he whispered. "Please stay." Arding play. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it echo in her ears. The machines beeped steadily beside them, like the rhythm of two uncertain hearts, aligning for the first time. Maria hesitated. She knew she should leave, find the nurse, fix the mistake. But there was something about his voice, fragile, sincere, familiar in a way she could not explain, that pinned her to the floor. Outside the door, the rain intensified, streaking across the window like silver threads. She sat slowly in the chair beside his bed, her breath shallow. "All right," she said at last, almost to herself. "Just for a minute." He exhaled, the tension in his face easing. For the first time in weeks, his monitor steadied, his heartbeat smoothing into a calm rhythm. Maria watched in stunned silence, unaware that the man before her was Jacob Miller, one of the most brilliant electrical engineers in the city, and a millionaire whose world would soon collide with hers in ways neither could have imagined. She looked at him again, her voice a whisper. "Who are you?" Outside, lightning flashed over Miami Bay, and in that brief moment of light, fate quietly rearranged two lives that were never meant to meet until tonight. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Miami General Hospital. The rain from the night before had left the streets glistening, and the palm trees outside swayed gently in the humid breeze. Maria Alvarez sat on the bench near the lobby, her fingers wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. She had barely slept. The memory of the man's voice still echoed in her mind. "You came, I have waited for you." She told herself it had to be confusion. Maybe he had mistaken her for a nurse or a relative. Still, the way he had looked at her, like her face, meant something refused to leave her thoughts. At the reception desk, a nurse called out, "Miss Alvarez? You were asking for a patient last night, right? The man in room 307? Maria stood quickly. "Yes, how is he?" The nurse frowned, flipping through a chart. "Room 307 is empty. The patient was discharged 2 days ago." Maria froze. "Discharged? But I was there last night." "Yemen." The nurse shook her head. "Then you must have gone to the wrong room, honey. Happens all the time." Maria's stomach dropped. She thanked the nurse and walked down the east corridor, her sneakers squeaking again on the polished floor. When she reached room 370, the one she had entered by mistake, she hesitated. The door was open now, sunlight pouring across the white sheets. The bed was neatly made, empty. The machines were silent. On the nightstand sat something she recognized instantly, her small silver necklace shaped like a light bulb. She must have dropped it there during the chaos. Her breath caught. She picked it up and noticed a small folded note underneath it. The handwriting was careful, uneven, as if written by someone recovering from injury. "You forgot this. I am glad you came in even by mistake. I hope you keep shining light where others have none. Yam. Maria read the initials again. J.M. Who was he? Outside, the day grew hotter, the Florida sun reflecting off the hospital's white walls. She slipped the necklace back around her neck, tucking it beneath her uniform. Something inside her shifted a quiet pull of curiosity, or maybe fate. That afternoon, after finishing her shift at the community garden, she stopped by the hospital courtyard. The air smelled of wet soil and jasmine. Doctors passed by, talking quickly. Volunteers watered the plants near the benches. And there, sitting in a wheelchair near the fountain, was the man from last night. He looked different in daylight. His dark hair was neatly combed, his hospital gown replaced by a loose gray shirt. A bandage still wrapped his shoulder, but his posture was stronger. He was talking to a doctor, his tone calm but precise, his hands moving as if explaining something technical. Maria hesitated at a distance. Then the man's gaze lifted, catching hers across the courtyard. For a second, time seemed to pause. The sound of running water, the distant traffic, even her heartbeat, all faded into silence. He smiled faintly and gestured for her to come closer. "Good morning," he said, his voice steadier than before. "I did not imagine I would see you again so soon." "I was just returning this," she said, holding up the note. "You dropped it." "I wrote it," he replied, his smile deepening. "And you dropped the necklace. So I suppose we are even, lo?" Maria felt a flush rise in her cheeks. "I did not mean to bother you. I only came because I thought you might need it back." He shook his head. "You gave me something last night that no machine could measure." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He pointed toward the heart monitor beside him. "When you walked in, my pulse steadied for the first time in weeks. The doctors could not explain it. I think maybe you reminded me that I am still alive." His words made her chest tighten. "You should thank yourself for surviving, not me." He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe survival takes two kinds of power, one electrical," he said, tapping his chest lightly, "and one human." Maria smiled softly. "You sound like an engineer." "I am," he replied, almost shyly. "Or I was. Electrical engineering, mostly renewable energy systems." She tilted her head. "So, you make light for a living?" He laughed quietly. "Something like that. And you? What do you do when you are not walking into the wrong rooms?" "I work at the community garden downtown," she said. "We grow vegetables for families who cannot afford fresh food. It is not much, but it helps." "That sounds like real work," he said. "The kind that keeps people alive in more ways than one." A nurse approached with a clipboard. "Mr. Miller, your therapy session is in 10 minutes. Maria's eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Miller." The initials on the note, J.M. He nodded to the nurse, then turned back to Maria. "Would you stay a little longer? After therapy, maybe we can talk again, about gardens and light." She hesitated, torn between common sense and the strange pull she felt around him. Then she nodded. "All right. Just for a little while." As the nurse wheeled him away, Maria stood under the warm Miami sun, the necklace glinting faintly against her throat. She did not know who Jacob Miller really was or how their paths would cross again, but one thing was clear. What had started as a mistake was quietly becoming something she could no longer ignore. The day hummed with the same quiet energy that had filled the hospital the night before, an invisible current drawing two lives closer together, one heartbeat, one spark at a time. Over the next few days, Maria returned to Miami General Hospital every afternoon. She told herself it was just coincidence, that she happened to finish her work near the hospital, but deep down she knew the truth. Something about Jacob Miller drew her back. There was a calmness in his voice, a quiet intelligence that made her forget she was talking to a millionaire engineer whose inventions powered half the city. Jacob spent his days in rehabilitation, learning to move his injured arm again. The accident had damaged nerves near his shoulder, making even the smallest movements painful. Still, when Maria appeared by the door, he always found a way to smile. "Do you ever get tired of visiting?" he asked one afternoon as she placed a small potted plant on the windowsill. Gardens do not grow in one day, she said. They need patience. Maybe people do too. He looked at the plant. What is this one? Basil, she said. It brings luck and keeps away sadness. He chuckled softly. Then I should keep it close. The air in the room was lighter when she was there. Nurses passing by would glance through the glass window and whisper to each other that the patient in room 370 had started laughing again. On the 5th day, Maria brought her small sketchbook, the one where she drew ideas for her community garden. During his therapy break, she sat beside his bed and opened it. I usually draw after work, she said. It helps me think. Every flower has a purpose. Even weeds can protect roots from heat. Jacob leaned closer, fascinated by the rough sketches of walkways and small benches under trees. You designed all of this? It is just a dream, she said. Maybe one day I will turn that empty lot near the river into something beautiful. He nodded slowly, eyes thoughtful. You think like an engineer without realizing it. She laughed. Do engineers think about flowers? Good ones do, he said. We just use circuits instead of soil. Laishu. When the afternoon sun turned the white walls golden, Jacob's doctor entered with good news. Your recovery is ahead of schedule. You might be discharged within a week, Mr. Miller. Maria smiled for him, but something inside her tightened. Soon he would leave, and their strange little world of hospital lights and whispered conversations would disappear. That evening she stayed longer than usual. The nurses dimmed the lights for the night shift, and the rhythmic sound of the heart monitor filled the silence between them. Jacob looked out the window at the Miami skyline glowing beyond the palm trees. Do you ever wonder, he said quietly, why some mistakes feel like they were meant to happen? Maria turned to him. You mean like walking into the wrong hospital room? He smiled. Exactly like that. Her cheeks warmed. If that mistake helped you heal, then maybe it was not a mistake. Yoga. He studied her face, his gray eyes soft but unreadable. You believe in fate? I believe in choices, she replied. Fate opens the door. We decide whether to walk in. He nodded, then reached toward the small lamp on his bedside table. You once said your father taught you about light. She touched the necklace at her throat. He was a maintenance electrician. He used to say every bulb has a heart, and that people are the same. We just need a little current to shine. Are they? Jacob's lips curved in a faint smile. That sounds like something I would say. Maybe you and my father would have been friends, she said softly. The mood grew quiet again. Outside, a warm breeze rattled the blinds. Maria closed her sketchbook and stood. I should go. The bus stops running soon. He looked disappointed. Will you come tomorrow? I promised the basil I would water it, she said with a grin. So yes. As she reached the door, he called out, Maria. She turned. Thank you, he said simply, for bringing light when I had none. She left the room, her heart unsteady. That night, back in her small apartment, she could not sleep. Her mother's medicine bottles lined the kitchen counter, and the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. She opened her sketchbook again and saw where Jacob's pen had added something earlier that day, a small note in neat handwriting under one of her designs. Add solar panels here. Use sunlight to power the garden's lamps at night. She traced the words with her fingertip, smiling through a quiet ache. He had not just looked at her drawings. He had helped her build on them. At the hospital, Jacob sat awake too. The basil plant glowed faintly under the lamplight. In his laptop, a blueprint blinked on the screen, a new project labeled Garden of Light. He leaned back in his chair, the ghost of her laughter still echoing in his head. For years, his world had been built on equations and deadlines. Now, for the first time, something else powered him, a feeling he could not name, but could measure in every heartbeat that refused to let her go. Outside, Miami glimmered with 1,000 streetlights. Inside room 370, Jacob whispered into the stillness, as if she could hear him across the city. You did not just fix the power, Maria. You turned it back on. A week later, Miami shimmered under a curtain of heat. The hospital courtyard buzzed with visitors, nurses, and the smell of disinfectant mixed with blooming jasmine. Maria arrived with a small basket of herbs and a shy smile, not sure if Jacob was still there. She had promised herself this would be her last visit. He would be discharged soon, and she needed to return to her normal life work, bills, and caring for her mother. But when she stepped into room 370, the bed was empty. For a moment, her chest tightened. Then a familiar voice came from the doorway. Looking for someone. Jacob stood there, dressed in a light blue shirt and black trousers, a medical brace still strapped under his sleeve. He looked stronger, almost like the man he must have been before the accident. You are walking, she said, surprised. Barely, he admitted with a smile. But it feels good to move again. Maria placed the basket on the table. These are from the garden. I thought they might brighten your place a little. Cole. He looked at the small plants, basil, mint, and lavender, and nodded with gratitude. They are perfect. You always bring life where things feel mechanical. They sat by the window where the sunlight poured through. The city skyline glowed in the distance. Jacob turned to her with a thoughtful look. Do you ever go to the beach? She laughed softly. Only when I forget I am broke. He grinned. Then maybe today you can forget again. I could use some fresh air before the doctors chain me back to therapy. Maria hesitated. You should rest. He tilted his head. You sound like my nurse. I am not your nurse, she said. I know, he replied gently. That is why I trust you. Later that afternoon, they sat on a quiet stretch of Miami Beach, far from the tourists. The ocean wind tugged at Maria's hair as waves rolled toward their feet. Jacob leaned back on his elbows, watching the water reflect the orange sundae. It is strange, he said. After the accident, I thought everything was finished. My company, my work, even my body. But then you walked in. She glanced at him, by mistake. He nodded. Maybe fate uses mistakes to fix broken circuits. Maria smiled at the metaphor. You really cannot stop thinking like an engineer. He laughed. And you cannot stop bringing light wherever you go. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the gulls and the surf. Maria noticed his hand trembling slightly when he tried to pick up a seashell. She reached over, steadying his fingers. It will get better, she said softly. He looked at her hand on his and whispered, It already is. That evening, as they walked back toward the parking lot, Jacob stopped near a lamppost. Maria, would you ever consider working with me? She blinked. Work with you? Yes. I want to build something your community garden, but with solar lighting. A space that stays alive even when the sun sets. Her voice trembled. You mean my sketches? He nodded. Your designs are better than anything my team could imagine. You see how things grow. I only know how to power them. Together, we could build more than circuits. She stared at him, unsure whether to believe the offer or the emotion behind it. Jacob, I am not trained for that kind of job. I do not have a degree. He smiled. You have what most engineers forget: heart. Come, Jake. The wind shifted, carrying the salty scent of the sea. For a moment, Maria let herself imagine it a real garden filled with light, people laughing, her mother sitting among the flowers. Then reality returned. It sounds impossible, she said. Then let us make it possible, he replied simply. Back at the hospital gate, they said goodbye for the night. Maria turned to leave, but Jacob's voice stopped her. Maria, he said softly. When I told you that you brought light, I meant it. Whatever happens next, promise me you will not stop shining. She met his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them, a current neither of them could see but both could feel. As she walked away under the Miami streetlights, the silver light bulb necklace caught the glow, flickering faintly like a tiny star. Somewhere behind her, Jacob watched until she disappeared into the crowd, unaware that the next time they met, the light between them would face its first true test. The following week unfolded like a quiet rhythm neither of them wanted to break. Maria kept tending to her community garden, but now her days ended at Jacob's new office, where she helped him sketch out plans for what he called the Garden of Light. The project would combine her natural layouts with his solar technology, a living space that stored sunlight during the day and released it softly at night. Jacob's company, Miller Dynamics, had recently reopened after months of silence. Reporters still whispered about the explosion that injured him and destroyed one of his prototypes. He avoided the press, focusing instead on recovery and this unexpected partnership that had changed the direction of his life. Every evening, as the Miami sun faded to coral, Maria arrived with soil-stained hands and a tired smile. She spread her drawings across his desk, and he studied them with the precision of an engineer but the wonder of a man rediscovering beauty. Your sketches look like hope, he said one evening. They look like hard work to me, she replied. Then maybe they are the same thing, he said quietly. They spent hours refining the designed solar paths, flower beds arranged like constellations, benches made from recycled wood. Sometimes she caught him watching her instead of the blueprints. One night, when thunder rumbled over the bay, the lights in the office flickered. Maria laughed. Even your building needs better circuits. No, Jacob smiled. It is old, but it still holds up, like me. He reached for a flashlight, but before he could turn it on, she held up her necklace. The small silver bulb pendant caught a stray glint of lightning from outside. See, she said softly. There is always a light somewhere. The power returned, and for a moment they stood close, faces inches apart. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with something neither wanted to name. Jacob stepped back first. "We should finish the plans," he said, his tone gentle but cautious. The next morning, Maria received a message from him asking her to meet at his company headquarters for an official presentation. She wore her cleanest dress and arrived early, clutching her worn sketchbook. The glass tower rose over downtown Miami, intimidating yet beautiful. Inside the conference room, several executives sat waiting. Jacob introduced her as the creative designer behind our new foundation project. Murmurs spread across the table. Maria's cheeks flushed, but Jacob's steady voice anchored her. He explained their idea how sunlight and greenery could heal both cities and people. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. After the meeting, Jacob guided her to the rooftop, where a small test garden had been planted. "This is only the beginning," he said. "We will build the full version near the river, just like in your drawings." Maria's eyes sparkled. "You really meant it, Loque. I do not make promises I cannot power," he said, smiling. They walked among the flowers. The rooftop breeze tangled her hair, and Jacob tucked a loose strand behind her ear without thinking. His hand lingered for a heartbeat longer than it should have. "Jacob," she said softly, "people are watching." "Let them," he whispered. "I am done hiding behind walls." For a moment, everything felt right, the garden, the light, the quiet pull between them. But as they turned to leave, a voice called from behind them. "Mr. Miller, the investors need to speak with you immediately," a woman said sharply. She was tall, composed, and carried a folder stamped with the company logo. "And they are asking about the woman you have been seen with." Maria stepped back, startled. Jacob's expression shifted from warmth to restraint. "Maria," he said carefully, "this is Elena Ward, our financial director." Elena's polite smile did not reach her eyes. "You are the gardener, correct? Quite an interesting promotion." Maria's throat tightened. "I should go," she said, but Jacob stopped her. "No, stay. You belong here." Elena arched a brow. "Does she?" The air between them grew tense. Maria picked up her sketchbook, her voice steady but quiet. "Thank you for today, Jacob. It means more than you know. But maybe I should let you handle the business part." She turned before he could respond. He watched her leave, his heart torn between the world he had built and the one that had just begun to bloom. That night, as rain returned to Miami, Maria sat alone in her apartment. Her mother slept in the next room. She opened her sketchbook and saw a pressed basil leaf Jacob had slipped inside. Beneath it, he had written a single line in his neat handwriting. "Light needs darkness to be seen." Maria traced the words and whispered to herself, "Then maybe this is our storm." Yuxtar. 2 days later, the sky over Miami turned gray again. The weather mirrored the tension that had grown between Maria and Jacob since the meeting. She had not returned to the office, and he had not called. The headlines in the local business news did not help. They showed Jacob standing beside a woman in a red suit, Elena Ward, with captions that read, "Miller Dynamics announces strategic expansion." Maria saw the article on a customer's phone while she worked in the garden. The image made her stomach twist, not because of jealousy, but because it confirmed what she had feared. Jacob was stepping back into his world, the one she did not belong to. That evening, she watered the last row of plants under the faint glow of streetlights. The basil leaves shimmered with rain, and her fingers brushed over the soil like she was trying to calm her own heartbeat. She told herself it had been foolish to think a man like him would stay grounded in her simple world. At the same time, Jacob sat in a conference room filled with investors. His injury had healed, and he wore a tailored gray suit, but his mind was far from the presentation slides. Elena's voice echoed beside him. "Jacob, we need to focus on the company's image. People are questioning your involvement with that gardener. It makes you look distracted." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Her name is Maria, and the project exists because of her." Elena's smile was thin. "You are a businessman, not a philanthropist in love." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping the polished floor. "Maybe I am both." He left before anyone could stop him. That night, he drove through the rain to the community garden. The street was quiet except for the hum of passing cars. He saw her silhouette under the small shelter, pulling a plastic tarp over the plants. When she noticed him, she straightened but did not smile. "You should not be here," she said softly. "I had to be," he replied. "I saw the articles. They are wrong about us." She shook her head. "They are not wrong, Jacob. You are a man with a company to protect. I am just someone who grows things that die when the season changes." He stepped closer, rainwater dripping from his coat. "Do you really think I care about seasons? You gave me something no one in that building ever could have reason to start again. Her voice broke slightly. Then why did you let them humiliate me? I did not, he said. I was trying to protect you, but I see now that silence only hurt you more. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain softened into a mist, and thunder rumbled far away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. I finished the design. The foundation approved it. The Garden of Light is going to be built exactly the way you imagined it. She stared at the paper but did not take it. Then congratulations, she said quietly. You did not need me after all. He hesitated. That is not true. Is it not? She asked. Because from where I stand, your world does not have space for me. Her words landed like a final blow. Jacob looked at her one last time, his expression full of regret. Maria, I will always have space for you, even if you walk away now. She turned toward the rows of flowers, her shoulders trembling but her voice steady. Then let me walk, Jacob. Maybe that is how both of us grow. Come, May. He wanted to argue, to reach for her hand, but he stopped himself. The light from the nearby street lamp cast long shadows across the garden, and he realized she was right. Sometimes love was not about holding tighter, it was about letting the other person breathe. Jacob left without another word. As his car disappeared down the wet road, Maria knelt beside the basil plants. The rain had stopped, and the clouds began to thin. Above her, a faint sliver of moonlight broke through soft, uncertain, but still shining. Days passed, and Miami returned to its usual brightness, but the light no longer felt the same for Maria. The community garden continued to grow under her care, yet every bloom reminded her of what she had lost. She tried to bury herself in routine watering, planting, helping neighbors, but Jacob's voice still echoed in her mind. At night, when the city lights shimmered against her window, she would glance at the silver light bulb necklace resting on her bedside table. It had once been a symbol of comfort, but now it felt like a quiet ache. She told herself it was better this way. He belonged to the skyline. She belonged to the soil. Meanwhile, Jacob poured his energy into finishing the Garden of Light project. Construction had begun at the riverside lot that once existed only in Maria's sketches. Workers moved in and out, installing solar lamps and irrigation systems, while he watched from a distance, hands buried in his pockets. Every detail reminded him of her, each curve of the walkway, each flower bed drawn from her designs. Elena tried to celebrate the progress. This will be good for the company, she said during one site visit. Public image, community engagement, you should be proud. Jacob nodded, but his expression stayed distant. It is not pride, he said. It is gratitude. The light came from someone who believed before I did. That evening he visited the hospital where they had first met. Room 370 had a new patient now, but he stood outside the door, listening to the faint hum of machines. For the first time he realized how strange it was that fate had begun there with a single mistake and a woman who spoke to him like he mattered more than his title. He whispered to the empty corridor, Maria, you changed the current. 有广来自. At the same hour, Maria sat at the bus stop near the river, unaware that the same project she had dreamed of was rising just a few blocks away. Her phone buzzed with a message from a number she did not recognize. The grand opening of the Garden of Light will take place this Saturday. Your name is on the invitation list. Please come. She stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to delete it and move on, but curiosity and something deeper made her heart stir. On Saturday morning, Miami bloomed under a soft sunrise. Maria dressed simply, her hands trembling as she fastened her necklace. She took the same bus route she always had, but this time it felt different. When she arrived, the crowd was already gathering near the riverfront. Bright banners fluttered in the wind. Children laughed as they ran between flower beds glowing with hidden solar lights. And in the center of it all stood a sign, designed in honor of Maria Alvarez, the heart behind the light. Her breath caught. For a moment, the world blurred. Jacob was standing near the podium, speaking to the press, his eyes searching the crowd. When he finally saw her, he stopped mid-sentence, as if words had suddenly lost meaning. Maria's heart raced. She had no idea what he would say next, but she knew this moment, like that night in room 370, was not an accident. It was another door fate had quietly opened. The crowd at the riverside grew quiet as Jacob stepped away from the microphone. The cameras were still flashing, but his attention was fixed entirely on Maria. She stood near the back, her hands clasped in front of her, unsure whether to stay or walk away. He left the stage, ignoring the assistants calling his name. The sunlight glinted off the silver pins on his jacket as he made his way through the rows of flowers. The people around him parted slowly, whispering as they recognized the woman from the headlines. When he reached her, he stopped, slightly out of breath. "You came," he said softly. "I almost did not," she replied. Her voice trembled, but her gaze held steady. "I thought I did not belong here." He shook his head. "This place exists because of you. Every light, every seed, every panel is all your design." Center. Maria looked around at the glowing paths and solar lamps shining even under the morning sunday. Children were weaving between the benches, their laughter filling the air. She could barely speak. "It is beautiful," she said. "I never imagined it would look like this." "It only looks this way because you imagined it first," Jacob said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded page from her old sketchbook. It was the drawing of the first garden she ever showed him in the hospital. "I kept this," he said. "It reminded me of the night you walked into the wrong room and changed everything." Her eyes softened, tears forming at the corners. "Jacob, I did not change anything. You did all this." He took a slow breath. "No, you showed me how." A soft wind moved through the garden, brushing past them. Reporters raised their cameras, sensing something more important than the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Jacob ignored them. He stepped closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. "I told you once that you brought light when I had none," he said. "I meant it. And I do not want to lose that light again." Maria looked down at the ground, trying to steady her heart. "Your world and mine are so different, Jacob. I do not know where I fit in." He smiled faintly. "Then we will build a new world, right between them." He gestured toward the sign at the garden entrance. Her name shimmered under the sunlight. "This is not charity. It is acknowledgement. You taught me that light is not something you invent. It is something you share." Maria blinked back tears. "You could have told me all this sooner." "I had to earn the right to say it," he replied. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he extended his hand toward her, palm open, as if offering more than just forgiveness. The cameras flashed again, but neither cared. Maria hesitated only a second before taking his hand. The crowd erupted in applause. The solar lights brightened automatically as the sun reached its highest point, reflecting off the river like thousands of small stars. As they stood together, Jacob whispered, "Welcome home, Maria." She looked up at him, smiling through her tears. "It feels like I never left." The air shimmered with warmth and applause. And for the first time since that night in room 370, both of them felt what real light truly meant, not electricity, not invention, but connection. That evening, when the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, the garden glowed softly under hundreds of solar lamps. The city skyline shimmered across the river, and the sound of laughter still drifted through the warm Miami air. Maria walked slowly between the flower beds, her fingers grazing the petals that reflected tiny sparks of light. Jacob followed a few steps behind her, holding something in his hand. "Do you remember what you said to me the first night we met?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I said, 'You are not alone tonight,'" he nodded. "And you were right. I have not been alone since." He stopped beside the fountain, where the water caught the reflection of the lamps like scattered diamonds. From his pocket, he took out the small silver light bulb necklace, the one she had lost in room 370. "You dropped this twice," he said gently. "Once by accident, and once when you walked away. But it always found its way back." Maria's eyes glistened as he stepped closer. "Jacob," she whispered, "why are you giving it back again?" He took her hand, placing the necklace in her palm. "Because this time, I want you to keep it as a promise, not as a goodbye." She looked down, her breath trembling. "A promise of what?" He smiled softly. "Of partnership, of purpose, and of love." Ardal. For a moment the only sound was the faint hum of the lights surrounding them. Then he reached into his other pocket and revealed a small ring, simple, elegant, and made from the same recycled metal used in the solar panels that powered the garden. "This ring," he said, "was crafted from the light you created. Every day it will remind me that love, like electricity, does not fade when it is shared." Maria could not hold back her tears. "You do not need to do this for me, Arkai." "I am not doing it for you," Jacob said softly. "I am doing it with you." She nodded slowly, her heart steady and full. "Then yes, Jacob, I will keep the light on." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the garden lights flickered once, almost as if they responded to her words. The crowd that lingered nearby began to applaud again, but all Maria could hear was the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat aligning with his. As they stood together beneath the glowing arches, the wind carried the scent of basil and salt water through the night. The sign behind them shimmered one last time, the Garden of Light, where hope grows. Maria leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Some mistakes are meant to happen." Jacob smiled. "Then may we never stop making them." Above them, the city lights joined the stars, and the garden continued to shine, powered not by machines, but by two hearts that had finally found their way home.